All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This is the first community show of 2025. Um, I would like to welcome all of you and introduce Sergio Abraham, who will be our host today. If you could, Sergio, go to the next slide. I have a couple of housekeeping items just for everyone that we should remember. All of our community shows are recorded and then posted to community afterwards. Please keep yourselves on mute. If you have any questions, please use the raise your hand feature, or you can always use the chat to enter your questions in, and we can get to them at the Q&A portion. Otherwise, you can just wait till the Q&A portion and raise your hand, and we will let you ask your questions. Go ahead, Sergio, to the next slide. Our safe harbor slide is just there for everyone to take a look at. This will also be posted in our blog along with the recording. And I will hand it off to Sergio.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. So super happy to be here with you, talking about data masking, which is a feature that we've been getting requests for a long time now. It took us a while to build it properly. We wanted it to be robust enough. So first of all, I want to start discussing what is data masking and what is not, because there is some confusion. And when I started getting into conversation with customers about data masking, there were multiple keywords in the middle, like anonymization, tokenization, encryption, data masking, and people use those words sometimes as synonyms, and they are not. So I want to clarify what data masking actually is to be on the same page. So masking is about hiding sensitive data, preserving the original format and structure. It is not about how we store the data. So in Reltio, data is stored encrypted at rest. So that's a different problem, right? So we are not talking about how we are storing data. Data masking is about the presentation, is security at the presentation layer, how data is displayed, especially PII and PHI and any other sensitive attributes that you have in your models. The idea is that even though it's masked or it's not fully shown in the UI or when you want to display it, the idea is that the data remains usable. You can still use it for analytics, for matching, for search, and all those use cases. So what does it look like in Reltio? And this is just a few screenshots. Basically, at each attribute or each sub-attribute, you will have the data masked with the eye icons, basically to one by one go in there and clicking on unmask or mask again. It's as simple as that. So I will get deeper into this now. There are ways to configure this. There are the permissions model in the middle. But at the end of the day, what your users will see is this. Attributes masked in the second screenshot here. And then when you click, or the first one as well, and when you click on mask, which is the eye icon, it will be displayed. On the second screenshot, what you see is the lack of the eye icon. So some users will have the ability to unmask, others will not. Others will see the attribute either fully or partially masked. So in a nutshell, that's what the feature is. Now, I wanted to highlight some key principles behind building this feature. First of all, most importantly, it has to be backward compatible. It means that enabling data masking in your tenants will not disrupt anything. That was a key principle. You have to make explicit actions in the system to enable it, and even in those cases, it would not break anything. Your UI use cases, your integrations, nothing will break. I will explain that later, but it's fully backward compatible. In fact, the feature is already there in your tenants right now. You just didn't enable it. Second, we have this security first mindset. So it is not about building something that masks in the UI, because that can be simply bypassed, right? If we are masking in the UI only, that means that someone can simply go into Chrome, into the developer tools, and look at the actual values there, because in that scenario, the API is getting the plain text value and the UI is masking. We are not doing that. Security first mindset means the API is retrieving the data masked already and then displayed in the UI masked. So the UI is doing nothing here. And when you want to unmask it, the UI is asking the backend again for the full value. So there's no way to bypass this mechanism. However, if you look at the first principle, there's a challenge here because on one hand we are saying it will not disrupt anything, especially your integrations. On the other hand, we are saying the data gets masked in the API. So that brought us to the third principle, which is how we can make it simple and compatible with these additional principles, and very, very easy to use, right? So how to set it up? First, in the data modeler, when you select the specific attributes, now you will see an additional option in the bottom called enable data masking. As soon as you enable it, you will see these options where first you can select which type of masking rule you want. The masking rule means which portion of the plain text value will be hidden, will be masked with asterisks on top. So we have a few rules out of the box. Email masking, it means it will mask everything except the domain. We have the first n characters that will mask the first n characters, of course, and same with the last n characters. And you can see the example here for birth dates or social security numbers, stuff like that, IDs. Sometimes you want to hide the first part, the second part, so you can play with it. And on the right, you have the mask preview. So whenever you are configuring masking for a given attribute, you can play with the simulator here to see what it will actually look like. And the last one is custom masking. This means that you can mask anything you want in any format, any structure using regular expressions. So it will work in the same way. You just select the custom masking option and you will write a regular expression. And on the right, you will see which portion of the plain text value is being masked based on the regular expression. So it is fully flexible. Like for example, let's say you want to mask only the middle, like you want to show the first characters and the last characters. We don't have a rule for that, but you can create that with custom masking. So you do this attribute by attribute, whatever attributes you want to mask. And it also applies to nested attributes. So you cannot mask the parent, let's say, but you can mask the individual sub-attributes one by one. You can decide which ones. So yeah, it applies across all entity types, all attributes types. Sorry, so this is what defines which attributes are the ones that will be considered as PII, PHI, or sensitive for you, that those will be masked. Now the next step is who will be able to unmask. So here's where we go into the backward compatibility scenarios. Today in metadata security, you define basically which entity attributes you want to protect, which role will access that attribute, and what actions are possible. On the left, you have a very simple scenario where users with role read data can read IDs. So the attribute ID can be read only by users with that role. If you enable masking for that attribute, it means that all users with this role will see the data masked, the ID masked. People without this role will not even see the attribute. So this is a key difference. You can hide the attribute completely from the screen. This is something we support already. So if you define the attribute in metadata security without access for a given role, it means that role will not be able to see the attribute at all. But we have requests from customers saying, we do want to see that there is an attribute, but we don't want to see the value. So now, if you enable masking for the ID attribute in this scenario, people with role read data will see it masked, but as they have the read permission, they can unmask it. Now, on the second scenario, on the right, we created this new permission called read masked. Users, in this case, with the role read data no unmask, will have this permission, and it means that they will see the attribute, it will be masked, and they will not be able to unmask it. The eye icon will not be there, and even if they trigger the API to unmask it, they would be rejected. So we are checking permissions for unmasking operations as well. So those basically are the basic operations, right? You either can unmask or you cannot unmask. There are some key considerations here. The first one is that as soon as you enable masking for an attribute, it will be masked for all users, regardless of the roles, as long as they have access to that entity, right? But users who have access to those entities will see the attributes masked, all of them. Integrations will continue working as usual. I will show more details later, but integrations, your interfaces, Postman, APIs, your own applications built on top of Reltio APIs will continue getting the data in plain text. Those attributes, even if they are flagged as masked, to be masked, they will not be masked for your own API calls. Your own applications on top of Reltio, your connectors, your analytics, your Salesforce connector, though all those use cases remain the same. Data is not masked for them. You need to make explicit actions for that. But by default, even if you enable masking for an attribute, it will not happen. About nested attributes, I mentioned earlier that you can configure masking for any individual sub-attribute you want. But when you see in the UI, the label, which is let's say the title of the nested attribute, cannot be unmasked. It doesn't really matter because once you expand it, you can unmask the sub-attributes, but just something to consider. And for now, we don't have a general unmask option to unmask everything. Like some option somewhere where you say, I want to unmask everything, you just click on that. We don't have that. First of all, for security reasons, we think, or at least in my conversation with customers, I didn't find that as a real use case for now. I am open to other opinions, but with the security mindset first, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The idea is that you should unmask only the individual attribute that you need for your operation. Otherwise, it wouldn't be needed. I don't know if I mentioned this, but when we talk about masking being available in Reltio, it means it's across all UIs. It's everywhere. If you do search, if you do match, if you go to the sources, if you go to the main profile, if you go to workflows, you do DCRs, anywhere you go, you will see data mask and you will have the ability to unmask it individually. That's what I was mentioning. There is no general unmask option to unmask it everywhere. Again, we are open to suggestions for future enhancements. For now, we consider that it was good enough for the first version of this feature. Now, stop chatting. I will show it to you. Give me a second. Let me find the right window here. So this is what it looks like in the search UI, right? Like you search for, in this case, individuals. We have configured the phone numbers to be considered PAI. They are masked, and you can click on the eye icon. You see that it took a few milliseconds because it was basically retrieving the plain text value from the backend. Now, let's say we want to configure another one. Let's see the email. You see here, enable data masking. You have the options, full mask, email mask. So in this case, we want the email masking. And here we can play with it and see what it will look like after enabling it. So you save the data modeler. And now when we go back, you will see it applies immediately. Now emails are masked, and you need to go one by one to see them. And as I said earlier, this is everywhere. These are nested attributes, and you see how you unmask specific sub attributes. You go to relationships. You also have it there. Potential matches, sources. It's everywhere. Even here, you need to unmask one by one if you want to see that one specifically. And this is very important. And I haven't mentioned this earlier, but we have activity logs showing that a given value was unmasked. For, again, this is mainly, I wouldn't say security, it's more audit and compliance reasons. Some requirements, some privacy requirements may indicate that you want to see when someone was actually looking at a specific PIA attribute or PHI attribute, some sensitive attribute. So for that, in the activity log now we have enriched it. So whenever someone clicks on the eye icon to unmask, it will be populated with a new event here saying this person unmasked this attribute. So this person actually looked into this sensitive attribute. So the user I just was showing to you has read permissions. Now, this is another user with read masked permission. I was mentioning the new permission we created. So very similar experience. It's mostly the same, but you don't have the eye icon. These users should be able to see that the attribute exists, that the attribute has content, or that the content is valid, but they will not be able to see the actual value. And they cannot unmask it. Even if they try via APIs, they cannot do it. And here you have the example in the material security configuration where it doesn't have read permission. It has read masked. Here, you see? So it's as simple as that. Like if you have existing configurations, you just change read masked or you just leave read. I mean, from a permissions standpoint, you don't really need to change anything to start with it. You just need to enable masking at the specific attributes. And then after that, you decide whether you want to restrict the ability to unmask. That's up to you. But for now, if you just want to play with it, you can simply go and enable masking for specific attributes. So this is I think the final piece here on how to consume mass data. I was speaking so far about the UI and all the different applications we have and how you consume data masked from the UI, because that's basically the main use case. However, we know there may be some corner cases or some very specific use cases where you may want to get masked attributes through your integration, through your interfaces or your scripts. So that's possible by doing this. In the same, basically, we have this new option called send masked that will consider the masking configuration for pure API integration, pure API access. So this means I was saying earlier that this is fully backward compatible. Your integrations, your interfaces, your APIs, your connectors do not have this parameter right now. So they will continue working as usual, even if you enable masking for all your attributes. They will not return mask. It will come in plain text. However, if you do want to get those attributes masked via your APIs, via the APIs, then you have to add these options equal send mask. And this option goes across other APIs. If you do search, if you do DCRs via API, if you want to retrieve DCRs, so you always have to add that send mask parameter at the end of the URL. Basically, the API will consider the masking configuration and the permissions. Maybe, for example, you wanna create, you have a connector where you wanna send mask data somewhere else, and you wanna fully restrict the access to plain text data. So for the user in the connector, you will change the permission from read to read masks. And then it will work like this. You will get data mask via APIs. If you need to unmask data via API with your own applications or connectors, this is the endpoint. You basically define which is a specific entity ID, the specific attribute, the specific sub-attribute, whatever, and then you will get the data in plain text. However, this works only if you have read permission. If you have read masked, even if you run this API, you will not get the sensitive attribute in plain text. So I'm finishing here. So I just wanted to walk you through some use cases. These are fake use cases, fake stories based on opinions and stories I heard from customers. But the idea is to illustrate how to use it, right? So imagine a data officer in a health insurance company. You want to protect sensitive data, of course, but you need your data stewards to operate. So on one hand, you can say, for example, okay, I want to do full email masking for customers who opt out of marketing. Or I want to do the first n characters masking for the first 4 digits of customer IDs or last n characters for to hide the year of the date of birth. So you can play with it. So the data steward can continue doing their job, validating the quality through the other tools we have, through matching, through other features in Reltio, without compromising privacy, without actually looking at the data. It's not always possible. In some cases, they do need to see the plain text value, but it's not always the case. Sorry. Another case, there in some more heavily regulated scenarios where you need to prove some kind of justification or prove that you really need to see a value, right? Like, let's say it's about health data and data is masked. You have permissions to unmask, but you need to justify why you're looking at the data. So this is possible today, right? Because once you unmask, you get an activity log, and then whoever is monitoring those logs will be able to see who is actually looking at the data, and then investigate whether that's a valid action or not. Is it authorized or not? Again, this is probably more an extreme scenario, but I know it exists. And last one here, more on the analytics side, as I was saying earlier, let's say you build a connector or some integration, you are exporting data from Reltio to some analytics uh, reporting tool, and based on the work you're doing on the analytics tool, you don't really need to see the email or phone number, but you need to get them to do the processing. Like, for example, maybe you want to see if the email is actually there, or you want to see if the phone number is actually there in the attribute, but you don't really need to see the value. So in that case, you can implement masking at the API level for your integrations, your connectors, where the data will go to the reporting, to the analytics tool, but not the full plain text value. So that's another option. I'm finishing now. So I know there are several questions here, so I'll get into it right now.
Yep. So we have a few questions. The first question is the masking role-based? Max said it is role-based, but the API response is masked for everyone. Is this correct?
For now, yes. So in this first version of the feature, as soon as you enable masking for a specific attribute, it will be masked for everyone. And masking is the most sensitive operation which can be controlled by roles. If this becomes also a requirement, we can of course extend it to do that as well.
And can we mask attributes of a relationship?
Yes, it was responded by Saurabh. Thank you. Yes.
And then looks like Saurabh answered most of these
Yeah.
already.
Okay. Thank you, Saurabh.
But I think it's important so people can hear it from
Yeah,
you. When you configure the masking rule on an attribute, it shows up on the UI, but you said it does not impact integrations like Postman.
exactly. Because what we implemented is the UI is sending this send mask parameter to all the APIs. So basically, the UI is asking on the backend, hey, send me the data mask by default. You cannot change that. So that's how it's working, and that's why it doesn't affect integrations, because your integrations are not sending that parameter right now.
Cool. And then the last question on here is if you mask an attribute in a given entity and it's included as reference attribute in another entity, will the masking be applied?
Yes, yes, it works everywhere. Yes. If not, then that's an issue, and we need to fix it. But yes, it's everywhere.
Great. That's the last question in the comment section, but
Okay. Anything else? We finished very early today, so I'm here if you have additional questions.
and again, this will be posted on community as soon as tomorrow. So keep an eye out and you can always go into it. Oh, there's another question. Sandro, go ahead.
Yeah, just I wanted to elaborate on something. You're saying then that if we apply the masking rule, it shows up in the UI, but it doesn't show up in the integrations, at least not yet, right? So if I'm a user and I've masked that attribute, I can actually go into Postman and actually see it unmasked then. Is that true? Day one, if I
If
call that same API?
if you have the permissions to unmask, yes.
But I thought you said it doesn't apply to integrations day one.
Yeah. So let me paraphrase. The API remains the same. The API remains the same. So by default, if you, let's say, enable masking, the API as it is today will continue returning to you the same response as today, as yesterday. On the UI side, the UI is not calling the same API anymore. The UI is calling the API with the additional parameter that is forcing the backend to mask the data. So in the UI, you will see data masked. Now, if you do want to see data masked in your APIs, that's not the default case, but you can do that if you manually add that additional parameter in the URL. So if you add that parameter, then you will also get data mask in your APIs, but not by default, because you don't have that parameter today. Was that clearer?
It's clear, but it seems to me though that I would have thought you would have wanted to control it based on the role definition so that you can apply masking, and then it will, if you don't have the ability to unmask it based on the role, it should automatically apply across the board. I would have thought. I thought that would have been.
No, wait. So if you have read masks permission, so let's speak about read and read mask. This scenario I was explaining is if you have read permission, which means you can unmask. If you are under read mask permission, regardless of you calling the parameter or not, data will always return masked. So, and you cannot unmask. So basically you cannot bypass it even if you have read masked, because even if you don't send that parameter, data will come masked too. Even the APIs.
That was the part I missed. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
that's good. Then. So we can apply it day one on the integrations then as well.
Based if you want, yes.
Yeah,
yes. If you want, yes.
I gotcha.
Yes. And again, if you need any help, please reach out. We can guide you through that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this community show. We have another one coming up in 2 weeks, so keep an eye out. And there's another one following that that's not up yet, but will be happening the last week of March. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.